Chapter 37 Husband and Wife Just Breathe. I took a deep breath as Mrs. Chandler placed her hands on my shoulders. You look beautiful. Smiling at my reflection in the mirror. Thank you. Laura adjusted the corset straps in the back of my dress and nodded in agreement. You look beautiful. It had taken you and her mother over an hour to finish my hair and makeup. Fortunately for me, 𝐊𝐢's mother was an expert in everything beauty and was able to help complete my wedding look. My hair was pinned back away from my face and flowed down my back in loose curls. My makeup was natural with the exception of red lipstick. I took a deep breath and glanced at Victoria as she came in through the sitting room. I unclosed it behind her. She gasped as she laid eyes on me. You look stunning, she breathed out. Thank you, I said softly. She glanced around the room at Vega and 𝐿𝐢, who were both in their dresses. 𝐿𝐢 held my bouquet in one hand and hers in the other as her mother fixed her hair. Vega sat in the corner, picking at her nails. We heard a knock at the door and Victoria turned to open it. Standing in the doorway was Jace. He was dressed in a tuxedo, his eyes immediately finding 𝐿𝐢. I saw his glance soften, but just as soon as I saw it, it was gone. Jace looked over to me and smiled. Wow, he said smiling. Adam's a lucky guy. Walking inside the room. He glanced around the room awkwardly. Can we have the room, please? Laura, Victoria, your mother, Vega, and Mrs. Chandler all left quickly and quietly. Is everything all right? I asked him, walking over to where he stood. Jace nodded. He wants to see you. I left. He can't. Jace shrugged. It's bad luck. I insisted. He's outside the door. He told me. My smile fell and I faltered. He can't see me. To my 𝐊𝐴𝐺𝐸 𝐷𝐼𝐿𝐢 𝐿𝐢𝐴𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢. What if he closes his eyes? Jace suggested. I took a deep breath. Jace smiled and turned around to walk back to the door as I stood there anxiously. He opened the door and I heard a muffled exchange of voices. You're joking, I heard his accented voice say. I heard more muffled voices before a groan. He walked around the corner and I bit my lip trying not to laugh. Adam had a hand over his eyes, using the other hand to feel his way inside the room. I feel like a bloody idiot. I left. Where are you? 10 steps to your left. He turned and walked towards me slowly. Am I going to run into anything? Maybe. He huffed. Comforting. I held out my hand and grabbed his outstretched one. I saw him smile at my touch as he stopped walking and grabbed my hand tighter. No peeking, I reminded him as he took his hand away from his eyes. They're completely closed. He assured me. Is there anyone else in here? No, why did you want to see me? I asked softly. Well, I can't see you. I left. I wanted to tell you something. His face growing serious. Okay, I said slowly. Adam licked his lips nervously. When he faltered, I felt my stomach drop. You're scaring me. I'm not trying to. Smiling. I just wanted to let you know before our day got crazy that I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. I smiled and put my hand on his face. I can't wait either. I said, lowering my voice. I'm especially looking forward to tonight. He laughed and kissed my palm. I'm counting down the minutes. Someone knocked on the door. We've got 5 minutes. They yelled. See you at the end of the aisle. I said to him. See you there. Darling. He turned around slowly and held his hands out as he tried to make his way out of the room. 3 more steps to your right. I said, laughing. He tripped over the table and barely caught himself. 4 more steps to the right. I laughed as he found the door and walked through it. Mrs. Chandler walked in and looked at me. Are you ready? I smiled and nodded as she walked over to where I stood. I wanted to tell you, she started, that I'm sure your mother and father would want to be here if they could be. I gulped. I had been thinking about them for the past week. I'm not sure you're right, I said quietly. They're your parents. I know they would be. I swallowed hard, trying to keep tears at bay. She placed her hand on my shoulder and rubbed it reassuringly. "They're ready for you." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my mind on Adam as I walked out of the room. He was standing outside the door and handed me my bouquet of roses as I walked out. Laura came behind me and gathered up my dress train. I smiled at her and followed her as they led me down the hallway. We made our way to the ballroom where I heard the crowd of guests muttering. Vega turned and winked at me before she made her way down the aisle. 𝐿𝐻𝐬 holding her arm. Classical music began to play as they walked. 𝐊𝐢 and Jace followed Mrs. Chandler kissed my cheek as she began to walk as well. Xavier walked out and I looked over to him. "I don't want you to walk down that aisle alone," offering his arm. "Thank you." I held out my hand and he tucked it in the crook of his arm. I sucked in a sharp breath as I heard the music change tunes. "Just keep your eyes on him." I took a deep breath as we took our first steps down the aisle. I gripped the bouquet, afraid my sweaty palms would cause it to slip out of my hand. Audible gasps could be heard as Xavier and I made our way down the aisle. Once the overhanging flowers were behind us, I could clearly see Adam. He bit his lip and smiled as he saw me. I tried not to smile too hard as he winked. The train dragged along the floor behind me as Xavier and I walked further towards the spot where Adam and Jace stood. You and Vega stood on the other side, both of them smiling excitedly. As we got closer, Xavier took my hand in his. Adam took a step forward and Xavier handed me to him. "She's all yours," Xavier whispered as Adam took my hand in his. Adam smiled at me. "All mine." I smiled as I stared down at my left hand that was clasped by his. Our ring-bearing hands were twined in his lap as we sat, watching everyone dancing. Vega and 𝐿𝐻𝐬 were waltzing along with the other alpha superiors and their mates. Adam's fingers softly danced over my nut's nest and lead as he observed the party. I smiled as I stared at my husband. Jace walked up behind him and whispered something in his ear. Adam listened intently before Jace walked away. He turned to me and leaned in close. "Let's get out of here and do our own wedding reception." He nodded, smiling mischievously. "Not to burst your bubble," I said, laughing, "but I think someone would notice that the bride and groom had disappeared. We would be long gone by then." I looked at him in surprise. "Gone where?" "It's a secret," he said, smiling. "But our flight leaves in an hour and a half, so you need to choose quickly." I didn't think we were doing a honeymoon. "To my 𝐿𝐻𝐬 𝐬𝐿𝐻𝐬 𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 not go on honeymoon. I shrugged and he smiled. I can't believe it. What? He just smiled and shook his head. What? I asked again. He looked at his watch. What's your decision? I looked around at everyone dancing. No one would see us leave. The cake had already been cut. We wouldn't be missing anything. Let's go. He smiled and stood up, grabbing my hand tighter and pulling me out of the room. Don't I need to pack? I asked him, struggling to gather my train in my hands. He shook his head, going around me and grabbing the back of the dress. Already done. We made our way into the foyer where Bartleby and Tyler stood eating cake. Leaving already? Tyler asked, smirking. I blushed. Is that your 5th piece of cake? Adam asked. Tyler scoffed. Please. It's my 7th. You guys are cute and all. But the only reason I even came was for the cake. Good to know, I said, laughing by. Tyler said as we walked out the door to meet a car that sat in the driveway. I turned and waved before Adam and I got into the car. Where are we going? I asked him. He shook his head. I've already told you. It's a surprise. I huffed. You could always have everything planned. Adam laughed. He seemed excited, and I couldn't help but smile at his giddiness. The car drove for a while before we arrived at the airport. We got on the plane and it was only Adam and I as he held the train of my dress while I stepped inside. He closed the door and I heard the plane start. Where on earth are we going? I asked again. You'll see when we get there. Is it somewhere outside the country? I asked him. Is it somewhere cold? You can't try to guess all you want, but I'm not telling you. He laughed. 𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿 𝐿𝐷𝐿 𝐷𝐞𝐲𝐻𝐬 𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿 𝐂𝐿𝐷𝐿 unwavering 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐥𝐻𝐬. Grabbing the bag from the seat. There are clothes in here that you can change into. I smiled and bit my lip as I took the bag from him. I might need help changing out of my dress. Oh no, I know what you're trying to do. He laughed. I've waited this long. We can wait until we get where we're going. I laughed. You're joking me. He shook his head. Not kidding. Adam helped me untie the back of the dress and I went into the bathroom to change into the small black dress that was in the bag he gave me. The plane rode on for a few hours as Adam and I talked about our future together. Once the plane had landed, I tried to look out the window but he stopped me. Seriously. Laughing. Close your eyes. I smiled and did as I was told. I heard the door open as he led me towards it. No peeking. I shook my head. Still smiling. Standing in the doorway. I felt a warm breeze. Open. I opened my eyes to see a setting sun and palm trees. I could see a sandy beach off in the distance. The sunset reflecting off the ocean. Where are we? I asked, laughing. I may or may not own a private island. What? When were you going to mention this? Now seemed like a good time. Adam laughed. I turned to look at him. Now was perfect. 𝐿𝐷𝐿 𝐷𝐿 𝐿𝐷𝐿. Leaning up on my tiptoes to kiss him, he kissed me gently, wrapping his arms around my waist and picking me up. I squealed as he did so. Adam laughed and carried me off the airplane. We walked from the tarmac onto the beach. After a few minutes, the sun began to set deeper down into the horizon, and I saw the stars come out. He carried me further until we came to a hut that sat on the shoreline in a clearing of palm trees. What is this place? I asked him. This is the place where I finally make love to my mate. I felt myself blush as he said this. Adam walked up to the hut and set me down on my feet as we reached the porch. I walked up to the door, pushing it open to reveal rose petals that trailed from the door to the bed that sat in the middle of the large, circular room. Candles were littered across the room, flickering in the dark. The open windows made the white curtains dance in the breeze and allowed the moonlight to stream in. How did you manage this? I asked him breathlessly. I pulled a few strings and flew people out this morning to set it all up. I turned to look at him as he shut the door behind us. He smiled at me. I love you, I whispered. He put his hands on my face and leaned in. I love you so much more. His lips met mine softly. My hands traced up his arms and my fingers tangled themselves in his curls. My mouth parted and his tongue slipped past my lips. I moaned into the kiss as it deepened, and he bent down to pick me up. His hands cupped my butt and he lifted me up to carry me further into the room. I wrapped my legs around his waist and I reached down to untuck his shirt from his pants. I felt my heart begin to race. My hands slipped around his torso and I yanked away his tie and began to unbutton his shirt. He sat me down on the bed as I pulled his shirt off to reveal his muscular chest. Adam pushed me backwards gently and my back hit the mattress. He pulled off my shoes and dropped them on the floor before crawling over me. I kissed him again, passionately this time. He reached under me and pulled the dress over my head, breaking this kiss to take it off. I saw his jaw clench as he stared at the red lingerie I wore under the dress, the same red lingerie he had wanted to see on me a few weeks earlier. He groaned and leaned down again to kiss me deeply. My hand slid down his torso to unbuckle his belt. My hands were shaking as he pulled away from me and yanked the belt off with one swift movement. Adam hovered over me, his lips barely touching mine. He ran a hand up my leg, pulling it up to wrap around his waist as his lips trailed along my jaw and down my neck. I moaned as his teeth nipped at the claim. He pulled away and sat me up to sit on his lap. We both took a moment to catch our breath, staring at each other's swollen lips and flushed cheeks. Thank you. My eyebrows furrowed. For making me wait. He explained. I just hope it was worth it. 𝐿𝐷𝐞𝐝𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐻 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐬𝐻𝐿. Biting my lip, his nose brushing against mine. Darling, I'll make sure of it. Chapter 38. Not a chance, and he certainly did. The echoes of my moans engulfed off the walls of the cabana for most of the night. It was only after a few hours that our stamina seemed to dissipate and we fell asleep still tangled in each other's arms. I woke up the next morning to our bodies intertwined. My face nuzzled into Adam's chest, and his strong arms wrapped around my body. I felt the warm breeze floating in through the open windows, the smell of the ocean with it. Opening my eyes, I saw the sunlight streaming in and shadows of the palm trees dancing in the wind were cast along the walls. Taking a deep breath, I began to trace my fingers across his chest, feeling his warm skin under my touch. I knew by his sigh and the tightening of his grip around my waist that he had woken up. He took a deep breath and spoke, his voice deep and husky. "Good morning, love." My eyes closed as his lips kissed my forehead gently. "Good morning." I turned around in his arms, groaning as a dull pain spread across my hips. He hummed in amusement. "Feeling okay?" "No," I laughed. "My bad." I turned to lay on my stomach, his hand sliding up the bare skin on my back as I did so. I sighed in content as he brushed my hair to one shoulder. "Hungry?" Adam asked. I hummed in response as he chuckled. I'm not sure why I bothered to ask. Kicking up from my pillow, he winked. I blushed as I noticed his tousled hair, remembering how my fingers had been tangled in the dark curls the night before. "I'll get something to eat." Pulling back the duvet, Adam got out of the bed, his towering and muscular frame walking over to a kitchenette that sat on the other side of the room. He opened the fridge and pulled out a carton of eggs. I watched as he made omelettes, his broad shoulders flexing remissly with the effortless small movements. The delicious aroma of food filled the room as he turned back to face me and walked over, balancing to plate. 𝐿𝐷𝐞𝐝𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐳𝐿. And 2 mugs of coffee. I sat up, holding the sheet to my chest to cover my neck. Breakfast in bed. Smiling, I looked out. Adam laughed as he handed me the warm mug of coffee. "Well, it was either that or you could try and manage to walk over there yourself." Adam was right to assume I was sore, considering I had winced even sitting up. I knew walking wouldn't be easy. I took a sip of the hot coffee and brushed my hair out of my face as Adam sat down next to me. He placed the plate in front of me on the bed and handed me the fork. I took a bite of the omelette and moaned. "Why do you not cook more often?" I asked in disbelief. "If I can keep those noises coming out of you, I'll do it as often as you need." Winking and causing me to blush, after finishing the omelette, I put the empty plate and coffee mug on the bedside table and laid back down, pulling the covers up to my chin. Adam reached over me and placed his plate and mug down as well. He sighed and wrapped an arm around my stomach. "See, the nice thing about being away is that no one can interrupt." Biting my lip, as I turned to look at him, he leaned in to kiss me and his lips had barely touched mine before I heard a phone begin to ring. "You had to say something." I laughed. He pushed his face into his pillow and groaned loudly. I laughed and turned around to grab his pants from the floor. "Ignore it." His voice muffled. I reached into his pocket and pulled the ringing cell phone out. 𝐿𝐷𝐞𝐝𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐻𝐿. 𝐿𝐷𝐞𝐝𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐻𝐿. Handing it to him. "It might be important." Adam looked up from the pillow. "If you think it's important." I rolled my eyes at his sass and answered the call. "Hello." I listened for a response as I watched Adam disappear underneath the sheet. "Evelyn. 𝐿𝐷𝐞𝐝𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐻𝐿. Hi Jace. 𝐿𝐷𝐞𝐝𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐻𝐿. Feeling Adam's hands grip my knees and slide them apart. Is Adam there? 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐀𝐥𝐻𝐧 enthusiasm. Trying not to gasp as I felt Adam's warm breath hit the inside of my thigh. A little busy. I felt Adam's mouth trailing up the inside of my thigh, leaving wet kisses against the skin, and I tried not to moan. Oh, Jay said. Well, could you tell him that I've got a lid on your mom and dad's case? My eyes widened and I sat up, pulling back the covers from Adam who laid between my legs. Talk to him, I said quickly. Adam rolled his eyes and sat up, grabbing the phone from me and placing it up to his ear. Yes. I watched as his expression molded into one of deep thought and concentration. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐀𝐥𝐻𝐧 enthusiasm. No, do what you have to. His eyes drifted to me. Yes, he said to Jay. My eyebrows furrowed as Adam mended the call. What happened? I asked him. He said someone reported your dad crossing pack lines in Utah. What about my mom? Did they get them? Are they there? Adam shook his head. They're looking for them now, but there was no sign of your mom. I groaned and lay back down on the bed. I don't understand. Don't worry about it. Throwing his phone back on the ground. I shook my head. What else can I do but why? I whispered, staring at the ceiling. Adam crawled above me, hovering over my body. I can think of a few things. Kissing my neck. The sun was setting when the phone rang for the second time. Adam and I were coming in off the beach when I heard the ringing and encouraged him to answer it. Muttering something about how we shared our honeymoon with the pack, he went inside and grabbed the phone before coming back outside on the porch as he answered it. I was drying my hair with a towel when he ended the call, all without saying a word. Who was it? 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐀𝐥𝐻𝐧 enthusiasm. Sitting down next to me on the steps and letting out a deep breath. Your dad got away. I sighed and pulled my knees up to my chest and rested my chin on top of them. Adam placed a hand on my back, rubbing it reassuringly. We'll get him. I shook my head. And if you don't? He slid closer and wrapped an arm around me. Let me tell you something. The day I met you and I saw that bastard put his hands on you. He stopped talking and laughed, although I could tell it was to cover up the anger in his voice. I saw him put his hands on you and your eyes glazed over. Your body froze. You were used to him treating you like that, but you were still scared of him. I gulped, looking down at the sand between my toes. Adam shook his head. I've dreamed of killing him almost every night since I met you, he said honestly. Now I have a reason to go after him. And you think I would just let him get away? I was quiet for a few minutes, watching the sunset below the horizon and listening to the waves crash on the shore. You can't kill him, I whispered, speaking finally. Adam shook his head in disbelief. I won't make any promises. My mom needs him, I said quickly. She won't make it without him. She's sick. He gets her the medicine she needs and he's the only one who can get it. She's addicted to pills. It was more of a statement than a question. I nodded. I don't know for sure, I said, sighing. But I think so. She had surgery when I was little to lose weight. My dad said she was ugly when she was fat, so she thought the only way to fix that would be to lose weight. But it didn't go right. She was always in pain and that's what he did to help her. Adam was quiet for a few minutes. I'm sorry. I leaned down to pick up a handful of sand and sighed. I don't know why you're apologizing. I felt his arm tighten around me. I'm sorry that you had to go through it. I wiped a tear from my cheek. Just promise me you'll still love me, even if I get fat, I said, laughing. Adam didn't smile, looking at me very seriously. Only an insecure man would care about the number on someone else's scale. I began to chew on the inside of my lip, rolling a grain of sand between my fingertips. Look at me. Taking my chin in his hand gently, I glanced at him. I'm not an insecure man, he said firmly. So you go ahead and get as thick as you want. I've got strong arms. I'll still be able to hold you. But will you want to? I saw his jaw clench. Let me show you how much I want to. He leaned in and I felt his hand untie the bikini strap across my back. I gasped just as his mouth covered mine and he pulled me into his chest. His arms went under my legs and he picked me up, carrying me back inside the cabana. After 2 more days, the phone rang again, this time summoning us back to the castle. I'm so sorry. Adam apologized, pulling a sundress over my head. Your Aunt Alpha, 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐵 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐜𝐬 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝𝐬. I'm a Luna. We can't pretend that we can't stay in this fantasy forever. We're not leaving this fantasy. We're taking it back with us. The honeymoon isn't over yet. I left. Keep telling yourself that. Romeo. But our plane leaves in 20 minutes. There's a bed on the plane. Winking. As well as a box of files that Jay sent to catch you up on everything you've missed for the past 5 days. He groaned, throwing the T-shirt into his bag. Don't remind me. I left. But, rest assured, I'll be catching up on my sleep on that bed because I don't have a box of files waiting for me. 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. Not fair, he muttered. As we left the cabana, he promised to bring me back. Looking forward to it. 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. We walked along the shore, Adam carrying our bags and me collecting shells that washed up before we finally reached the tarmac where the plane sat, waiting. As soon as we boarded, I noticed the box of files that Adam had to go through and cringed. I certainly don't envy that job. I sat down beside a window and watched as the plane took off into the sky, doing exactly as I said I was going to. I went to the back and slept on the bed the entire plane ride back to the castle. I slept content, lying soundly, my body exhausted from the week. It wasn't that Adam was too hard to handle. It was me. I had certainly made up for the time lost waiting on our wedding to come. When Adam woke me up and informed me we had arrived, I sat up and yawned. You sleep more than anyone I've ever met, yet you're always tired, he said, shaking his head. Well, I didn't sleep much the last few days. 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. Can you blame me? He nodded. Yes, I can blame you. I feel you initiated it more than I did, he said, laughing. If you have a problem with that, Adam stopped me. I wasn't complaining. He winked at me as he picked my bag off the ground and turned to exit the plane. That's what I thought. I muttered. I heard that. You were supposed to. We made it back to the castle after driving from the airport just as it was getting dark. I shivered watching the snow falling outside our bedroom window. Why is it so cold here? He reminded me, setting our luggage on the bed. 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. I think I'll take a hot bath. 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. Thinking at how great it would feel on my sore muscles. Was that a statement or an invitation? Adam asked. I turned from the window to look at him. Which one would you like it to have been? A knock sounded at the door before he could answer, although I already knew what he was going to say. What? Adam called out, already annoyed by the intrusions. 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. Thank you for announcing yourself, Adam said sarcastically. Care to tell me what you need? 15 minutes of your time, Jace replied. I watched as Adam shook his head and walked over to the bedroom door and opened it. I'll be back, he informed me. See you then, I said suggestively. I saw how much it physically pained him to leave after hearing this, causing me to giggle. I ran a hot bath and waited for Adam to come back. After the water turned cold and he still had not returned, I got out of the tub and drained the water. I put on my robe, brushed my teeth, and combed my hair. Hearing the bedroom door open, I looked over to the clock and noted it had been over 2 hours. "I'm so sorry," he said, walking in. I could tell that he was mentally drained from whatever conversation he had with Jace. "Everything all right?" Leaning against the bedpost. "Just more leads that will probably go nowhere," he said, sighing. I thought about this as he walked past me into the bathroom to shower. When he walked back out into the bedroom after doing so, a towel around his waist, I spoke again. "What can I do to help?" He looked up at me and shook his head. "Nothing," he assured me. "I've got everything under control." I crossed my arms and sighed. "You're stressed out." I noted. "I'm perfectly capable of helping. So let me." He walked over to me and put his hand on the bedpost above my head, the other reaching behind me to wrap around my waist. "Worry about it tomorrow. For now, get some sleep." My hands trailing down his torso to disband the towel from around his waist. "With you next to me, not a chance." Chapter 39, Lost and Found. I woke to soft fingers trailing up and down my spine. Taking a deep breath, I opened my eyes to meet Adam's stormy blue ones. I smiled lazily and snuggled into him. "Good morning," he chuckled. "Good morning, love." He pulled me up onto his chest and I laid my head down against it, listening to his heart beating. "Why are you watching me sleep? You weirdo." He laughed. "I've only been awake for a few minutes." I peeked and I opened to look at the clock beside the bed and took note of how late in the morning it was. "Don't you have to work?" I asked him. "I'm taking the day off," he informed me. "I'm technically still on my honeymoon." I hummed. "Do you get to do that?" "I'm the alpha. I can do whatever I want." I laughed in amusement. I felt him take a deep breath and sigh. "Still tired?" I asked him. "We had been up most of the night." It wouldn't have surprised me. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷 𝐷𝐞𝐻, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, he replied. I furrowed my eyebrows, getting the sense that was wrong with him. "What's bothering you?" Adam was silent as his fingers gently dragged across my back slowly. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. When I still hadn't received a response, I looked up to see him staring at the ceiling. "What's wrong?" He took a deep breath. "I couldn't tell you before the wedding." My eyebrows knit together in confusion. "Couldn't tell me what?" When he faltered again, I rolled off of his body and sat down on the bed next to him, sensing something was wrong. "Adam, what is it?" He sat up, propping himself with his hands on the bed behind him. Vega tried to get me too. He faltered again. "To what?" He licked his lips, still not looking at me directly. "To have sex with her," he explained. I felt my stomach drop to the floor and my jaw go slack. "I didn't," he assured me quickly. Noticing my reaction, I swallowed the knot in the back of my throat. I asked him, "Once last weekend, once when she arrived at the castle. The night you walked in on her and Jace. She came into my room first." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "Nothing happened," he said firmly. "I sent her away the second I figured out what she was doing." I blinked hard as the hot tears spilled out of my eyes, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "How do you know she was trying to get you to sleep with her?" "What did she say?" Adam bit his lip and shook his head. "Tell me." 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He took a deep breath. The first time, I didn't know it was her. I had been sleeping but woke up when the door opened. I assumed it was you, but when she got into the bed and I felt her touch my shoulder, I knew it wasn't, he said honestly, his eyebrows furrowing as he recalled the event. I was so shocked that I pushed her out of the bed and I think it scared her. She got up quickly and left, never saying a word. The second time, however, you and Liu were in town with the baker to talk about the wedding cake and she came into my office. She told the guards that you had sent her to ask me a question about the wedding, so I let her in. She started talking about the wedding, but then she said something about how I only had a few more days left before my sex life became non-existent. I closed my eyes, feeling the words hit me hard. I sent her away each time, but she never got the hint. Why didn't you tell me sooner? 𝐿𝐻𝐷𝐞𝐬𝐭, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Adam shook his head. She's your best friend and she was in the wedding. She's not my best friend. 𝐿𝐻𝐷𝐞𝐬𝐭, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My jaw clenching. I huffed in anger, tossing a pillow against the headboard as I got off the bed. I pulled on my bathrobe and could hear Adam follow me into the bathroom. Listen, you told me about Diedrich, and you killed him. I interrupted. I thought it was only appropriate that you knew about Vega. You finished. I didn't want to ruin our wedding. I sat down on the side of the tub and put my head in my hands. Why would she think that she could do that? Did she not think you would tell me? I asked angrily. And why would she say that your sex life would become non-existent? It's clearly not. Gesturing to his naked body in the messy bed. I shook my head. I'm going to kill her. I said matter-of-factly. That's a little extreme. He commented. I glared at him. That's a little hypocritical. Don't you think? Especially considering that Diedrich's grave is still covered with fresh dirt. Diedrich isn't dead. You're lying. He shook his head and I narrowed my eyes at him. If Diedrich isn't dead, it isn't because you left him alive out of the kindness of your heart. He's still of use to you. I guessed. You're spot on with that assumption, he said, folding his arms across his broad chest. But killing your ex-best friend while her father is dying in a hospital bed with her mother by his side, already grieving, would be a stupid idea. I groaned, realizing his point. What if I just kill her a little bit? He rolled his eyes. Once you figure out how to kill someone a little bit, let me know. I'll take notes. With that being said, Adam turned to leave the bathroom. I shook my head in disbelief, remembering how Vega had asked me about Adam, the way she talked about how she would have climbed him like a tree and that he had the body of a god. I should have seen it coming. I stood up from the side of the tub and took off the robe. I walked over to the shower and turned it on, feeling the need to relax before I committed homicide. I stepped under the stream of warm water, wiping away the hot tears and rubbing my puffy eyes. Adam was my husband. Vega couldn't have him, and I would make sure she knew it before the sunset that night. Admittedly, I was plotting the details of her murder when I felt Adam's arms wrap around my waist and his hands press against my stomach. I turned around at his arms as he pushed me against the wall. You're cute when you're jealous. Noticing the scowl on my face. Oh really? I asked incredulously. Then get ready, because I'm about to be fucking gorgeous. He laughed as he pressed a finger to my lips. Watch your mouth, woman. My eyebrow raised as an idea hit me. No, you watch my mouth. 𝐿𝐻𝐷𝐞𝐬𝐭, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Sliding down the shower's slick tile wall onto my knees. Apparently Adam wasn't as capable of taking a day off as he thought he was. It was either that, or Jace didn't get the hint. He called the room after Adam and I had eaten breakfast, asking for Adam to meet him in his office. Apologizing, Adam left and assured me he would only be an hour. 3 hours later, I knew he'd gotten caught up. I left the room around lunch and ran into you in the hallway. Much to her surprise. What are you doing back? Hugging me. Adam couldn't take off too much time. 𝐿𝐻𝐷𝐞𝐬𝐭, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Hugging her back. He is the leader of 4 continents. I guess. You said, laughing. She pulled away and eyed me. You look great. You even look like you got a tan. I laughed. My tan wasn't really noticeable up here in the North Pole, I said sarcastically. So, how was the honeymoon? I've heard Adam's Island is pretty nice. I shook my head as we walked down the hallway. Okay. First of all, why does he even own an island? Secondly, how did you know we were there? Laughing, she looked hurt. Who do you think was given the task of packing your bag for the trip? You're welcome for that super hot bikini. By the way, I laughed, holding up my hands in surrender. Thanks for that. It's no problem. I appreciate any chance I get to spend money, even if it isn't for me. I probably overpacked though. Why would you think that? She eyed me. You honestly expect me to believe you wore anything other than that swimsuit while you were there? I laughed, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. Barely even that at some moments. I admitted. That's what I like to hear. You said, laughing. Welcome to the Slutty for Your Mate Club. We go shopping for lingerie on Thursdays. Exactly how many people are in this club? I asked, laughing. 2 now, she replied. We walked to the kitchen for lunch. So are you and Jace a thing again? We're getting there. I'm only able to get a few minutes of his time each day because of his job as beta. She admitted. Some days are better than others. Your mates, I said, assuring lie. It will all work itself out. I opened the kitchen door to see 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐷 sitting at the counter eating a sandwich, and I froze. Are you okay? 𝐊𝐢𝐬 asked. Her voice caught Vega's attention, who immediately looked over at us. She smiled when she saw me and got off a chair quickly to run over and hug me. You're back. Giving me a hug that I didn't return. How was everything? It was great, I muttered angrily, trying to remember what Adam had said. So tell me. Hooking her arm around mine and pulling me over to the kitchen counter. How was your first time? Is Adam as great in bed as you thought? Give me all the details. I yanked my arm from hers. So you can fantasize about my husband later? I asked incredulously. What? Laughing. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about the 2 times that you tried to seduce Adam, I said angrily. Vega looked at me in shock, unable to say anything in her defense. You did what? You asked her. She tried to get my mate to fuck her. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿. Crossing my arms. And when that didn't work, she went and found your mate and got him too. I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth, but seeing you become as angry as I was and the fear that shone in Vega's eyes made it almost worth it. What is your problem? You asked her angrily. Vega found her tongue. Oh please, she said to 𝐿𝐢𝐬. All you are to Jace is a sex doll. It isn't like 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and a relationship. I saw the tears fill up in 𝐿𝐢's eyes as Vega turned to me. And you're a prude. You're vanilla and inexperienced. Neither of you deserved a mate. I'm the only one who could satisfy either of those men. I saw Ed as the blood roared through my ears. My fist swung through the air and landed perfectly between Vega's eyes. Immediately she fell to the ground in a daze, blood gushing from her nose. You're wrong about 2 things. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿. Squatting down to her level. Getting a mate isn't about finding someone you deserve, it's about meeting someone you don't deserve and in building yourself into a woman who does. Vega groaned in pain as she clutched her nose. Second, I'm more than capable of satisfying my mate. Don't believe me? You're more than welcome to sit outside my bedroom door tonight and listen in on the fun. I stood back up as Vega wiped her bloody nose on her shirt sleeve. Go anywhere near Adam 1 more time, and I'll make sure you and your dad are roommates. I threatened, stepping over her limp body. The look on 𝐿𝐢's face was priceless as I walked over to the pantry and began to make my lunch. Vega got off the floor and left the kitchen, still clutching her broken and bloodied nose. Teach me, Sensei. You pleaded, laughing. I laughed as well as I went over to the fridge and pulled out something to drink. A few moments later, Adam and Jace came into the kitchen. The expression on Adam's face was one of amusement. I just passed Vega in the hallway. Looking at me, I took a long sip of my water as his arms folded across his chest. Care to explain why she had a bloody nose? She ran into the wall. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿, heartfelt thanks 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝𝐬. Straight-faced. Adam rolled his eyes, obviously not buying. She'll probably have to black eyes tomorrow, View said, shrugging. It was rather unfortunate. Jace raised an eyebrow as she spoke. Amusing, isn't it? View asked him. How things come full circle. They stared at each other for a moment before Adam sighed. This isn't what we came in here for. What do you mean? We found your dad. He's en route here now. I felt the air leave my lungs and the glass of water slipped from my hands and fell to the ground, shattering. My ears were ringing as Liu and Adam scrambled to pick the glass up. He's coming here, I whispered. Adam nodded. My mum. He shook his head. Evelyn. My eyebrows furrowed. My hand was shaking. What? Adam faltered and I gasped, feeling tears burn my eyes. She died. Chapter 40. Tears left to cry. Unknown 𝐾𝐿 𝐷𝐞𝐻. Adam's 𝐾𝐿. My attempts to placate Evelyn were futile. After I told her that her mother had died, she went weak in the knees and I carried her from the kitchen up to our bedroom. She laid on our bed, holding a tear-stained pillow tightly to her chest. No matter how hard I tried to soothe her, Evelyn couldn't stop crying long enough to take deep breaths and calm herself. To say I was confused by this is an accurate depiction of how I felt. As far as I knew, her mother was absent from her life. She was a substance abuser and completely and utterly helpless at the hands of Evelyn's father. She didn't take care for Evelyn and never told her goodbye when I brought her to the castle just 3 months earlier. I couldn't understand why Evelyn cried for the woman who didn't love her, for the woman that was never there. My confusion, however, did not negate the fact that Evelyn did feel the pain of her death. This was the reason I tried to calm her, to tell her it would all be all right. After an hour or so of my failed attempts to do so, I left her alone to mourn and cry as much as she needed to. I couldn't help but be angry as I made the trip back down to my office. It had been such a good week. We'd only been married a short time and she was happy. Why now did her father have to make a reappearance? Why did her mother have to die? I knew this meant that there would be a period of time, at least for a short while, that our lives wouldn't be as happy. It was because of this that I hesitated in even telling her when I received the news. Jace was waiting for me in my office when I got there. How is she? I took a deep breath. As well as can be expected. Jace nodded understandingly. He'll be here in a few minutes. This statement stopped me from sitting down and I glanced at my watch. Let's go then. I grabbed the dress coat from behind my chair and put it on over my button, up as Jace stood up. I walked around him, leading him out of my office. Tell them I want him brought to the lower level of the garage, I commanded. Jace said nothing as I heard him pull his phone from his slacks and make the call. I went into the sitting room adjacent from the alt over to the bookshelf. The latch was hidden behind my copy of The Art of War and I pulled it with so much force it almost came out of the wall. I heard the gears clicking into place behind the shelf and soon the hidden door opened. I grabbed it, swinging it open so Jace and I could walk through it. The passage was narrow and dark except for what was illuminated by the dying fluorescent bulbs hanging from the ceiling every 20 feet. When my father was Alpha, he used this passage to escort women in out of his offices without my mother's knowledge. It was a long walk, but it was the quickest way to get to the south entrance of the castle where Evelyn's father would be brought. After walking down a few flights of rickety stairs, we had arrived at the door leading out into the dungeon. I opened it. My senses were immediately met with the harsh smell of decay, blood, and sweat. My eyes adjusted to the darkness quickly, seeing the occupied cells. Only people who committed crimes against the Alpha and Beta Superior were housed here for life. They were considered especially heinous, therefore resulting in them being housed separately from other criminals. Everyone who was there had been there for some time. I took note of the man who had attempted to assassinate my father curled up in the corner of his cell, sitting on molded hay. He was much thinner then than he had been when first locked away. I stopped my stroll when I arrived at the last cell. His blue eyes, full of hatred, immediately took notice of me and I smirked. comfortable. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿. He replied sarcastically. Diedrich has been down here since I had returned from Utah, after the beating he had received. I was surprised at just how quickly he had healed. But, then again, he was a pure blood, the only one in the dungeon. It made it all the more sweet to me to know how demeaning and dignifying it must have felt for him. You're about to meet a man who now shares your knowledge of what happens when they lay hands on my mate. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿. Pointing to the empty cell across from Diedrich where I planned on putting Evelyn's father. Has she asked about me yet? I felt my temper flare up. No, I lied. He stood up and walked over to place his hands on the cell bars in front of my face. Tell her she knows where to find me if she wants to know what it's like to be with a real man. Quick like a flash of light, my hand reached out and grabbed the collar of his shirt and yanked him towards me. Of course the bars were in the way, and this only meant he face-planted it into them due to the force. I let go and he dropped to the ground. I'm afraid that disqualifies you then, doesn't it? I smirked one last time before turning to walk away. You let him get under your skin too easily, Jace commented once we were out of earshot. I rolled my eyes. Don't pretend like you haven't entertained the thought of killing Tyler for dancing with you at the centennial. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐊𝐢𝐵N. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿. He said nothing else as we made our way out into the underground garage. Waiting there for us were 3 large vehicles and 2 men standing outside each of them. Where is he? The 2 men guarding the car in the middle turned and one of them opened the car door. The other reached inside and yanked his body out, causing him to fall forward from the car onto the concrete. It was a sweet sight to see. Evelyn's father was thin and frail. His cheeks had sunken in and he had heavy, dark bags under his eyes. His dark hair was matted to his head and he was coated with dirt and grime. Jay said they found him hiding out in the woods, trying to cross the border back into his pack. "Where's my daughter?" he asked me. Although his body was weak, his will was not. The strong tone with which he spoke disrespected me and I felt my blood begin to boil. "She's upstairs in my bed," I answered. "She didn't care to see you." I saw his jaw tick and it smiled. "I'm only here because I know the immense pleasure it will give me to see you locked away to die," I continued. "I need to speak with her." Trying to stand up, the guard behind sent a strong kick into his back, forcing him back down on the ground groaning in pain. Over my dead body, 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐊𝐢𝐵N. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿. Crossing my arms. The last thing I needed was for my wife to be even further traumatized by her father's presence. "It's important," he pleaded. I narrowed my eyes. It was taking every ounce of self-control in my body not to kill him then and there. I looked forward to the moment his blood was on my hands. "I've heard enough," I announced. "Take him inside and place him in his cell. I'll be back this evening to take care of it." With that being said, I turned and walked away and Jace followed. "He seemed serious," Jace commented. The only thing serious about him was how demented he was if he thought I would let him anywhere near her. "When are you coming back?" he asked me. I looked down at my watch. It was almost time for dinner, and I needed to make sure Evelyn ate something seeing as she hadn't eaten lunch. "Around 7, I answered. "Want me to come with you?" I chuckled darkly. I could handle him myself. Evelyn's POV. I woke up when I heard the bedroom door open. My eyes were swollen from crying and I had a knot in the back of my throat and a pit in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I felt Adam's presence behind me as he reached over and brushed my hair from my face. "Feeling up to eating something?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "What, to take a bath?" I shook my head again. I felt the mattress dip down as Adam sat behind me. His arm reached over me and leaned forward to look at me. "What do you want me to do?" Sighing, I felt the tears welling up in my eyes again. I was surprised I had any left to cry. "Can you just hold me?" Managing to speak quickly before I choked back a sob, Adam stood up and I heard him taking off his jacket and belt. He then climbed onto the bed and laid down beside me, wrapping his arms around me. He lifted me up and laid me on top of him, against his chest. I tried to listen to his heartbeat, hoping it would calm me down, but I instead ended up crying even harder. Adam said, running his hands through my hair. "It'll be okay." I struggled to catch my breath in between sobs as he continued to try and comfort me. "She's not going to be there. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿 𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "What do you mean?" I gulped. "She wasn't there for my wedding and now she'll never meet you and I'm going to have kids and she won't ever see them." I cried harder as I spoke the worries that had filled my head all day. I just wanted her to turn out okay. I confessed. I kept hoping that one day she would get better and finally be a mom. I didn't want her to die like that. Adam took a deep breath and rubbed my back reassuringly. "I'm sorry." I continued to cry for a few minutes before I managed to take a few deep breaths. Adam's arms loosened around me as I sat up and wiped my eyes. I immediately felt guilty as I noticed his tear-stained dress shirt. "I'm sorry. 𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." He smiled faintly. "It's just a shirt." I hiccuped a few times, still catching my breath and wiping away tears. "I'll run you a bath," he said, sitting up. "You need to relax for a little bit." I climbed off of him as he got off the bed and went into the bathroom. I heard him turn the water on and heard it begin to fill the tub. He came back out of the bathroom and picked me up, carrying me into the bathroom and sitting me on the side of the tub. He pulled my shirt over my head and began to undress me. I couldn't help but blush as he stood me up and tugged off my panties. He picked me up and sat me down inside the bath, the water sloshing around as it continued to fill up the tub. I pulled my hair up into a bun inside, feeling how nice the hot water felt against my achy body. Adam turned to leave and I stopped him. "Please don't go," I pleaded. "I don't want to be left alone." I saw him smile faintly before turning around and walking back to me. He began to undress and I slid forward in the bath as he got in behind me. I lay back against his chest once he was settled and his arms went around my waist to rest on my stomach. We sat in silence like that for a long time, until the water went cold. I leaned forward and pulled the stopper out and the water began to drain away. "You need to eat something," Adam said. "Do you want me to call someone and have something brought up?" I nodded, even though I couldn't tell if I was getting hungry or if the pit in my stomach was just growing deeper. Adam got out of the tub and grabbed a towel, handing me one as well, before drying off and heading back out into the bedroom. I heard his voice as he called for dinner and I stood up to dry off. Once I exited the bathroom, I saw him getting out a clean shirt and panties for me. "Thank you. 𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐸𝐻𝐿 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Taking them from him and beginning to change. After I had done so, a knock sounded at the door and Adam went to retrieve the food. "I have to go," he said after he had finished eating. I had barely managed to eat anything before Adam had finished and stood up, my eyebrows furrowed. "Where are you going?" "I have to go do something." Putting on a shirt and sweatpants. "I'll be back." He never answered my question and I stared at him quizzically as he left the room. A few hours had gone by before he returned. The lights were off in the room and I had almost fallen asleep when the bedroom door opened and he walked through it. I heard him walk through the room and go into the bathroom to shower. Adam came out a few minutes later and got into the bed. "Are you awake?" he asked gently after getting under the covers. I took a deep breath, yes. He reached out and pulled me into his chest, holding me tight. "Try to get some sleep, love." We were silent for a few minutes before I spoke again. "I want to see him." I felt his body stiffen against mine. "I don't think that's a good idea," he protested. "I know," I admitted, "but he's the only family I have left." "That's not true," Adam said, kissing my forehead. "You have me." Chapter 41 Escape. What do you mean I can't see him? Adam sighed in frustration. I can't let you see him. Evelyn. I groaned and sat down in the chair across from his desk. My father had been in the castle for 3 days and Adam was now refusing to let me see him after I began to ask questions. My mother is dead, I said gruffly. My father is the only blood relative I have left alive and you're not going to let me see him because you have a point to prove. Adam walked around his desk and stood in front of me. That man was not a father to you and never cared for you, to say the least. Why on earth do you want to see him after all those years of being beaten within an inch of your life? I bit the inside of my lip. I wasn't sure why I wanted to see him. But I did. You'll be right there with me, I protested. He can't hurt me. Not physically, Adam muttered, turning to walk back behind his desk. My eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean? Sitting back down in his desk chair. You're not in a good place emotionally. Love, you've only just found out 3 days ago that your mother has died and now you want to see the man that was abusive to you after years of trying to escape him. It doesn't make sense to me. Well, it's not like he killed her, I muttered. When Adam failed to respond, I looked up to him for reassurance. He didn't kill her, did he? Eyes wide. We don't know how she died. When your father was found, he told my men that your mother was dead. They took his words to be true due to the fact that he was covered in blood. So, she might not actually be dead. I asked him, sitting up straighter in the seat. I wouldn't get my hopes up. Love. I knew it was a stupid thought. She would never survive without my father. If my father hadn't killed her, she would certainly have died from the extreme cold and the withdrawal from her painkillers. I'm sorry, Adam apologized, that you never got to say goodbye to her. I could no longer mourn her death with tears of anger. It was like being around Adam. 𝐿𝐷𝐷𝐿 𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 me cold. Being that they were pure bloods, I doubted any of them had ever even cried. I imagined that I would become more and more like a robot. I stayed with them. Let me show you something, Adam said, motioning for me to come over to him. I stood up and he opened his desk drawer and reached inside as I walked around the desk. He pulled out an old picture frame and handed it to me. This is my mother, Adam said. I took the black and white photo from him and stared at it intently. She had dark, wavy hair like his. She had fair skin and high cheekbones that Adam had also inherited. I could see him in her more than I could in his father. She was gorgeous. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐿. Sitting down on the edge of the desk, Adam hummed in response. I don't remember her. I looked up from the photo at him as he sat back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. I was only 6 or 7 when she died, he explained. My father only married her because she was a pure blood. She wasn't his mate. Adam shook his head. He never told me what happened to his mate, but I knew he hated my mother because she looked so much like her. He cheated on her every chance he had. She didn't have a mate. Adam chuckled. Oh, she did. Who was he? The Alpha Superior of South America. My jaw went slack. That's why your father invaded South America. Yes, he finished. I took a deep breath, looking back down at the photo. How could she have married your father if she was mated to the Alpha Superior of South America? To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐷 𝐿𝐷, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My father got to her first. According to everything 𝐊𝐲 ever told me, she met her mate at a gala that was being held for all the alphas and their mates. My father found them in his bed later on that evening, and he swore to kill him and to take his land. And he did. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐷 𝐿𝐷, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Adam nodded. You see, my father's father, who was 𝐊𝐲 and Victoria's brother, Grew up in a house where you kept the throne limited to only pure bloods, and this was even before mating was restricted to only pure bloods. 𝐊𝐢𝐬 told me that Victoria's mate was an average wolf and she rejected him up to keep her dignity. That's why she tried to get you to do the same. 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐿𝐬 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐿𝐬. He nodded. What happened after your dad took over South America? Well, he killed the Alpha Superior and made my mother watch. She killed herself only a few days later, he said solemnly. Is that why your father went mad? Yes, he replied. He couldn't live with the guilt. That's terrible. 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐬𝐸. Sighing, I say all that to say that no family is perfect, Adam said as I handed him the picture. 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸�uu𝐀𝐐 Adam laughed. You don't have daddy issues. Love, your father has daughter issues. Don't blame the abuse on yourself. I smiled at the reassurance. But, he continued, if you want daddy issues, I'd be more than happy to give you a few. I gasped and slapped his shoulder. Laughing, Adam laughed and stood up from his chair, resting his hands beside my thighs. He leaned in close and kissed me gently. My eyes fluttered closed as I kissed him back. I pulled away as the kiss deepened. Someone is going to walk in here. I told my guards you were the only one allowed in here, he said, kissing my neck. Since when has that someone? Tell me not to kiss you. Don't kiss me. Mean it. I can't. He smiled as I felt his hand slide up the skirt of my dress. No one will come in, he said in between kisses. Just try not to be loud and no one will know. I sighed as he pushed me back onto the desk and began to unbuckle his belt. No promises. Adam's P.O.V. I kissed Evelyn goodbye before she left the office. I couldn't help but smile to myself as I buttoned my shirt back up and combed through my tousled hair with my fingers. However, I took one look at the document that sat on my desk and my smile fell. I picked it up and read back through it for the 1000th time that morning as I sat back down at my desk. This was Jace's report updating me on the case he had opened on the mystery man who had attempted to retrieve the invitation from the post office during the centennial. While Jace and his team were no further along in that investigation than they had been in the beginning, they had found one key piece of evidence, security footage from outside and in the night that the Germans had arrived at the centennial. The video showed Diedrich, Barrett, and their father coming and going from the inn. Earlier in the day, Jace pointed out that someone had checked into the inn under a name that didn't belong to anyone who lived in the village and a description that matched the man who had entered the post office. I was certain this meant the four of them were in cahoots. Jace had gone into town that morning to see when the man checked in and to see if he was still there. Jace would bring him back to the castle for questioning. I pushed that folder away from me and picked up the other one that drive 𝐿𝐢𝐳 had given me, detailing his reports on Mr. Chandler. The Chandler case puzzled me drive. 𝐿𝐢𝐳 was able to confirm that the attack had happened before Chandler had been brought to the castle. He also said that the reason no one had noticed the bite mark earlier was because it had been small incisions on his leg that only became noticeable after they became infected. While he wrote in his report that the bite was certainly one of a vampire, he also happened to theorize that the loss of blood from Chandler's major artery had been the cause of his amnesia. 𝐿𝐢𝐳 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐳. He suspected that Chandler's trauma would take years of recovery to stabilize his mental state. I hadn't told this to Evelyn yet. She had experienced enough devastation in her life so far this week. I wouldn't be the bearer of bad news again. The ringing of my office phone shook me out of my daze. I picked up the phone and answered it. It was the jailer, telling me to hurry down there. My eyebrows furrowed, thinking it had something to do with Evelyn's father. I hurried out of the office and down the passageway to the cells. When I arrived, I was met by the jailer, who had a panicked look on his face. What is it? He couldn't speak. Damn it. Man, what is it? I asked again. He gulped and stepped out of my way as I pushed past him to see what the problem was. I looked to Evelyn's father's cell, where he was curled up in a tight ball in the corner of the room. What's the problem? Not seeing an issue. Sir, of all the years my family has run this place for you, we've never once had one of them escape, he said, quivering. My eyebrows furrowed. I failed you. Sir, he gulped, pointing behind me. I turned around to see Dietrich's cell empty. Shit.